Hello guys, welcome to my channel SkyHub. So today at day 4, we will build a user route for sign up route, login route. Then for password hashing, we use bcrypt and JWT token to secure cookies. Then we will see the secure validation for our password and email. So let's start. Go to our Visual Studio Code. So next we have to create routes for our sign up, login, logout, etc. So for this we have to create a routes folder inside our source folder. And inside routes folder we have to create a userRoute.js file. So first of all we have to require Express, because Express is necessary to access the routing functionality. For this, const Express require Express. So for routing, we have to create an instance of an Express router. So this object acts like a mini application. It is capable of defining a specific route like /login, /logout, /signup, and it is used to keep route logic separate from the main application. So for this, write const userRoute user router express.route. So const user router is equal to express.router. So to define the user sign up using post route, we use user router.post. Then we specify the path /signup then we specify the controller function that will be executed when a post request hits this path. Let's say sign up. At the end, we export the configured router object as module.exports is equal to user router. So here first we define the post route for user sign up. So it specifies the user-router.post specifies that this route handles HTTP post requests. Here /signup is the specific path for this endpoint, and signup is the controller function that will be executed when a post request hits this path, this signup path, localhost colon 3000 /user/signup. Next, we export the configure router object. This is user router object. This allows the main server file to import it and mount it at a specific base path. So for controller function, we have to create a controllers file inside source. So inside source, we have to create controllers folder. And inside controllers folder, we have to create a user controller file. So we have to make a function called const signup. Is equal to async request response then we use try catch block. So to register the user, we must fetch the required field. In our case, it is name, which is required true, email ID required true, password required true, and avatar, which is also required true. So first, we have to require the user router in the index.js. So for this, we use const So it basically imports the user router inside user router. So it basically imports the user specific router. In Express, routes are often modularized into separate files. For example, /signup for registration, /login for sign in. This line loads all the route definition for our users, like /user/signup, /user/login, /user/logout, etc. Next, app.use So now we also have to set the middleware like cookie parser, Express.js. So for this, use app.use and next app.use. So this middleware intercepts incoming request, and if they have a content type application/JSON header, it parses the JSON body and attaches the resulting JavaScript object to the request.body property. तो ये इसलिए क्योंकि request.body में जो भी डेटा आता है वो JSON फॉर्मेट में आता है, तो वी हैव टू कन्वर्ट इट इनटू जावास्क्रिप्ट ऑब्जेक्ट, एंड जो कुकी है वो भी जेसन फॉर्मेट में आता है, तो उसको भी हमें पार्स करने का ज़रूरत है. तो फॉर दिस वी हैव टू इंस्टॉल npm i cookie parser. So now go to the Google Chrome and see the cookie parser, npm cookie parser. So here is cookie parser. So install npm i cookie parser. It is used to parse the cookie header and populate request.cookies with an object keyed by the cookie names. Optionally, you may enable signed cookie support by passing a secret string which assign request.screen, so it may be used by other middlewares. So required cookie, we have to require it. You can see the example app.use cookie parser. Now move to the VS Code. So we have to require cookie parser. For this, const cookie parser is equal to required here we also change the parser. So basically, cookie parser applies the imported cookie parser middleware. So this middleware parses the cookies from the request header and populates the request.cookie object, allowing your code application to easily access them. So next, we move to the userController.js. So first, we need required field of user model. So required field is name, email, password, and avatar. So in try, const user const name, also email ID, also need password, and these all things are in the request.body. So basically in index.js we use app.use Express.js. So whenever we tries to register and gives the name, email ID and password, so this Express.js makes it available in the request.body. So now after that we have to create the user in the database. So for this we must need user model. So here we export the user model and here we want to require it. First const user is equal to required models as user model. Now we are able to create the user in the database. User is equal to await user dot create user name, mail ID, password and avatar. So by default in public ID this is temp ID is stored as a string and in URL this is temp URL stored in string. So user is created. But first creating the user we must check that the user must be enter the valid email ID or password. So for this we will use validator. Now create utils folder. Inside utils we'll create validator file. So first have to validate request.body. Then we fetch name, email ID and password from request.body. And after that we create the user in the MongoDB. So inside validator have to require validator. So first we have to install validator. npm I now go to Google Chrome and the npm validator. So this is validator.js npm I validator. So a library of string validators and sanitizers. So there is a function validator.isMail. It will check automatically. We need not to explicitly explain these all things. Just use validator function. There are various function validator, byte length, for very. Now go to the VS Code. So we will create a validate function, const validate. So first filter out all of the mandatory field. Name, email ID and password. So first we import the validator library, a popular Node.js module that provides function for validating and sanitizing strings like checking email format or password strength. So next, this line const validate function, it defines the validation function named validate. It takes one argument data, which is expected to be request body. So which is basically data is request body, object containing the user's input. So here in const mandatory field, we define an array listing the names of the field that must be present in the data object for the validation to pass, email ID and password. Now must check the presence of all the mandatory field, like user must not leave the name and enter email ID and password only. So for this, use const it is allowed mandatory field dot every object.keyData.includes key. So basically it checks for the presence of all mandatory field objects mandatory field dot every key. So basically is name, email ID and password. Now object.key data, it returns an array of property names key present in the data object. So it goes to the request dot body and fetch all the key value like user submits name, email ID or password or not. So mandatory field dot every iterates over the mandatory field array and checks if every key that array is included in the key of the data object, then the result are true or false is stored in the is allowed. So basically inside our request dot body, which is data, the object dot fetches all of the key the user entered, and then we fetch from here mandatory field dot every key, which is name, email ID and password. And now if all the mandatory field are included in the key, then it returns true, otherwise it returns false. So let's say user does not enter name, but in mandatory field we have name. So now user does not enter name, so it not include in the key, but we have mandatory field dot every in key. So now this is mismatched. So is so false is returned in the is allowed. So after that we'll throw an error which is some field is missing. So let's say the user missed their email ID. So now in request.body the email ID as a key is missing, but we have mandatory field where email ID as a key. So now this key is not matched with the request.body.key, which is email ID. So it returns the false and not is allowed becomes true. So it throw an error some field is missing. So now check the email format. If not validator.email data.email ID throw new error invalid email. So it checks the email format. It uses the imported validator library is email. Email is basically the function which is inside the validator. It is used to test if the value of data.email ID, which is inside our request dot body data and data.email ID. So this email ID, this email ID is provided by the user, which is inside the data is request.body. So request.body.email ID or data.email ID. So it checks the data.email ID is a valid email string. The condition is true if the email is not valid. So the email is not valid, then it returns false, and here there is not, so it becomes true, then it throw an error. Now let's say if the email ID is correct, then it returns true. Now here not, it true becomes false, so it will not throw an error. So next we have to check our strong password. So next we have to check our password is strong or a weak password. So inside validator there is a function which is strong password. So here we pass our user's password, data.password, and if the password is strong, then it returns true, and here there is not, which will convert true into false, then it will not throw any error. So not validated dot is strong password checks the password strength. It uses the validator library is strong password method, which has default criteria, example minimum length of upper or lower case number and symbols. The condition is true if the password is not strong. After that it will throw the password is not strong error, and the message will displayed as a typo weak instead of weak. So message it's shown as typo weak instead of weak. At the last we have to export our module and import it into our user controller. Now let's move back to the user controller. Now the data comes from the user in the request.body is validated. We fetch name, email ID and password from request.body. Then we create it and make the and for now make the avatar. By default this is temp ID and this is temp URL because this is the required field. After that send a success message response.status 201.send user registered successfully, and in catch handles error like validation error, database error. So our response.status is 400. So now it's time to check our code. Go to index.js. Here we npm start. Our nodemon is started but it is crashed. Sign up. Sign up not defined. Router. Sign up. The controller. So it must be exported and we will import it inside the route. Module.export. is equal to sign up. Now go to in the route. Here const sign up equal to required error because of perfectly. So now let's start our server and let's check our code is working well or not. So npm start. Node is starting. Server is listening at port number 3000. Now go to your Chrome browser and check localhost 3000 is sending any response or not. So in localhost 3000, just reloading does not send the cannot get root. So basically we have a problem in our code, which is, let's move back to the Leetcode, which is in app.use in cookie parser we forgot to include the function. Now the node is restarting and starting again, and server is listening at port number 3000. Now again move back to the Google Chrome and you can see that it getting the proper response. So that's the problem in our code, which is in cookie parser I missed the function. Now let's go to the MongoDB and check our database. So here you can see that our database Leetcode is created, and inside Leetcode we have user table. Now move to the Postman to check our API. So this is our Postman. Here we choose new HTTP request, post request, enter your URL, which is /user/signup. Then we send our body request.body in raw format, which is in JSON format. So our required field is name. We put all the things in double quote, name, then colon, then its value. Here key is name and its value is, let's say, sky hub. Now next is email ID. So skyhub@.com. Next is password. Let's say skyhub@12. Send request. Okay, so validate is not defined. Reference error. So maybe yes code. Here we exports validate. Okay. So in user controller we forget to require it. So const validate equal to required as validate. Now server is listening at port number 3000. Again go to the Postman. Then again post request. Error, reference error, data is not defined. Now let's again move to the VS Code, and here there is D capital, here there is D small. Capital, now again the Postman, send the post request. So because of our internet is connected, so now it is connected, and post request, user registered successfully. Now go to the MongoDB. So here is our MongoDB compass, and this is our Leetcode cluster. This is our Leetcode database, and inside database there is our users table. and inside table we can see that user is successfully signed up. So here we have underscore id, which is automatically created, name skyhub, email id skyhub@gmail.com, password skyhub@123, which is a required field, role user by default, premium by default false, problem solved array empty, avatar. Here you can see that inside public id we stored string as this is temporary string, and inside url we stored this is temporary url because this is a required field. So created at and updated at, these two fields are shown here because of our timestamp. We add timestamp in our user model, and at the end there is version. So here is a problem, that is to store direct password inside the MongoDB is not a true practice. So we have to hash it before adding it into the MongoDB database. So we will see it how we can achieve it by using bcrypt. Let's go to the Postman again. Let's say Gmail, I remove and the post request. So invalid email. Add only at the rate. Valid email. Only send 6 digit in password. Big password must be of 8 digit. Let's say the name field and the request. So some field missing. So if the value of name is empty, then it will throw validation error, name path required. If someone is again wants to sign up, then it will throw error MongoDB server error, duplicate key, error collection, employee id 1, duplicate key, employee id skyhub@gmail.com. Now let's save it as a sign up. Again add a new. So that's all for the sign up feature. So for hashing our password, we use bcrypt. For this, we have to install npm bcrypt. Now let's go to the Google Chrome. So there are two libraries. First is bcrypt.js and second is bcrypt. So we have to use bcrypt, npm bcrypt. So it is a library to help you hash passwords. You can read about bcrypt in Wikipedia as well as in the following article. Here is version compatibility. So first we have to require it. Then these are some methods like bcrypt gen.gensalt, bcrypt.hash, bcrypt.compare, check a password. So we use bcrypt.hash and bcrypt.compare in our lecture. Let's move to the Visual Studio Code. Make sure to install npm bcrypt, not bcrypt.js. So first we have to require bcrypt. Next, before creating the user, we have to hash our password. So we have to hash our password and store it back into our database, which is request.body.password. We have to store it into that place. So request.body.password is equal to await bcrypt.hash. Then we send our password, which is this password. We fetched it from request.body, and then again we stored the hash password into request.body.password. And we want salting as a, let's say, 10 layer of salting. So basically it hashes the password bcrypt.hash, and it takes the plain text which gives the user, which is given by the user, and hashes it using the 10 round of salting or hashing. The result is irreversible because hashing is one-way conversion. So hash password replaces the plain text password which is inside the request.body.password. So after that we create our user inside the MongoDB. Now we want to send the token inside the cookie to the user. So for that we must have to install JWT. So let's go to the Google Chrome and search npm jsonwebtoken. So this is jsonwebtoken, npm jsonwebtoken. Here we use jwt.sign, then payload, then secret or private key, and options or callback. So if a callback is supplied, the callback is called with the error or the JWT. So it returns the JSON web token as a string. Payload could be an object literal, buffer, or a string representing valid JSON. So here are some options. Must have to require JSON web token. Then we use jwt.sign. So for secret key, go to Google and search generate a random JWT secret key. So here is the site, dev community, generate a random JWT secret key. This is the code, we have to copy it. Then again go back to the VS Code. Here first we will run npm I jsonwebtoken. Next we have to require it. So we use const JWT is equal to required JSON web token. Now next, after creating the user, we have to create our token. So const token is equal to jwt.sign then here we can send our payload, then our secret key, and then our options. So in payload we send our ID, which is by default generated by MongoDB /ID. So we name it ID colon user dot ID, and next email ID as email ID. So here you const user is equal to await user dot create. So first user is created and all the detail of the user is stored in this user. So basically first we name it as ID, then this user dot underscore ID, which is fetches from the user, which is basically the request dot body. Next, this email ID is the name and its value is this email ID, which is also come from the request dot body. Now for JWT secret key, you have to run a code which is node -c console.log require crypto random byte 32.toString hex. So first we have to require this crypto library, you can search it on Google. Open Google, crypto library. So here the Node.js crypto module provides hash function, HMAC, symmetric and asymmetric encryption, digital signatures, and secure random number generation. Now go back to the VS Code. So first it requires the crypto library, then it gives command that random bytes 32. We have to generate 32 random bytes, and we have converted it into the string and then in hexagonal form. So this will generate this number. So let's understand how it is generated. So you know that console.log basically prints the message. There is crypto library which is required from crypto. We give command generate random 32 bytes. Basically it is 32 random bytes. So first let's see what it generated. So it generated 32 random bytes in a buffer. Next, we converted it into string. Then it is converted into a string, but it is not readable, but it is not in readable form. So now we want that the number is in hexagonal form. So we include hex. So we get 32 bytes of hexadecimal number. Now copy this number and we can directly use it here, but this is our secret key. So we stored it into .env file. This is JWT key. Is equal to. Now move back to the user controller and here use process dot env dot JWT underscore secret key underscore key. Now next is our options. In option we give expiry detail. So basically this token will expires in 1 hour. Let's say 60 seconds into 60 minute. 60 into 60, so it will become 1 hour. So we create and sign a JSON web token JWT where payload includes the user MongoDB ID, user.id and email. In secret key, we use the secret key process.env.jwt underscore secret underscore key from environmental variable to sign the token with the secret key. Now next, in option we set the token to expire in 1 hour, 60 minutes into 60 seconds. Next, we want to set the JWT as an HTTP only cookie. Basically, we want to send this token inside the cookie. So for this, we use response.cookie. So response.cookie. So first we create token, then we create cookie, and token is basically inside the cookie, and we send cookie into the browser. So here response.cookie function instructs the browser to store the cookie. Here token, we set the cookie name as token and the value to generated JWT. This is the value of generated JWT. Now its max age is 1 hour. Set the cookie to expire in 1 hour. It is in milliseconds. Next we send the status code 201.send user registered successfully. Send a successful 201 created response. And in error we send status code 400. So it catches error, validation, duplicate email and sends a 400 bad request response. So that's all for signup function or signup route. Now next we have to create login route. So let's copy and paste, because most of the things are same, sign up and login. First change its name as login. So it defines the asynchronous login controller. Next try. Here we starts the error handling block. Now next is const name, email ID and password is equal to required.body. So here we don't want name field in login. We only want email and password. So here in validate method or validate function, we have mandatory field name, email ID and password, but in login we don't want name. So we remove it from here. And for validation, we use if not email. Let's say if the user do not enter their email ID, then what we have to do? We have to throw a error, new error which is invalid credentials. Next, same for password. If not password, then throw new error, invalid credentials. Here if we don't want to hash our password, don't want to create it, now after that, using their email ID, we have to fetch the user from the MongoDB database. So for this, use const user equal to await user.find1, and here we send their email ID. So if the email ID is present in the MongoDB database, then it's sent to this user. So what is here, u is capital, so this user is basically the const user require models user model, and this is different user. Here u is in small letter. Now next, we have to compare their password with the hash password. So for this, we have a method bcrypt.compare. So const compare is equal to bcrypt.compare. Here we send the password which is given by the user, which is in the plain text, and then the user password which is stored in the MongoDB database as hashed password. Basically, this password is the plain text which is I fetch from request.body, is the user passed during the login, and then this user.password is present in the MongoDB database when the user sign up. Which is in the hash form. Now, if the password is not matched, if not compared, then throw a new error password is incorrect. After that, we have to sign a JWT token. So for this, cons token is equal to jwt.sign ID, user ID, email ID. For secret key, same, and for options, same, expires in 1 hour. Next, we have to set the JWT as an HTTP only cookie. Then the same code, rest.cookie token message. Then we have to send response.status 201 user logged in successfully. Then in catch, send response.status 400.send error. So we are using 401 for unauthorized or invalid credentials. Let's see it one by one. Const login equal to async. Here we defines the asynchronous login controller. Then we starts the error handling block try. After that, we destructures email and password from the request body. We don't need the name field here. Then we check to ensure both the password and both the email ID and password were provided by the client, and if not, then it throws an error. So if it is missing, then it throws an error. Then we compare the plain. Then we find the user using the email ID and assign it into the user const user. So basically it is the query in the database find one to find a user document whose email ID matches the one provided. Now after that, we compare the plain text password from the request against the hashed password stored in the database. So bcrypt.compare performs the hashing operation on the input password to see if it matches the hash. This returns a promise that resolves to true or false. Then it checks if the password did not match. If the comparison is false, then it means the credentials are wrong. So password is incorrect. So we throw an error, password is incorrect. After that, we create and sign a new JWT token upon successful authentication, which is same as the sign up process. Now next, we have to set the new JWT as an HTTP only cookie for session management. Next, we send a successful 201 response as user signed in, logged in successfully. Then if error is catches, then we send 401 with their error message. 401 unauthorized response. Then we export both sign up and login. For this we sign up, login. Login, sign up. We have to require it in UserRoute. UserRoute dot post / login. That's it. Now let's run our server. npm start. So our app is crashed. NodeMon app crashed. Here are some error occurred. Is side Leetcode backend node module route leave route.js it. So new type error argument handler must be a function. Type error argument handler must be a function. So it is inside the node module. Don't have to check it. Then this is inside our source route and user route. So we have to check it here. It shows this post. So here are some mistakes. So let's say /login, but this login function is not required here, this page. So for this, use sign up as well as login. Now let's check. So our server is successfully listening at port number 3000. Now open your Google Chrome, go to localhost 3000. So it is running successfully. Then /user /register is also running successfully. Then /user /login. It is also responding. Now go to Postman. Open your Postman and post some request to user sign up. Now at that time the password is has before it is stored inside the MongoDB database. So send. First there is duplicate key error. First let's say we have to delete it. Then again we send the Postman request, post request. User registered successfully. Then open your MongoDB and refresh it. So now you can see that our password is stored in plain text. It is not hashed. Let's go back to our Visual Studio Code. Find out where is the problem. Let's first check console.log request.body.password. Again, after request.body.password, console.log again. Then delete it. Then open your Postman and send request again. Then open your VS Code. And you can see that here our password is this and our hash password is this. But when it is stored, it is not storing the hash password. It stores the plain text in our MongoDB database. Find out the problem. Let's solve it. So it is happened because it takes this password here when creating, not it uses request.body.password. For this, we have to directly send request.body. So now it gives me unexpected token dot. So for solving this, we can use a spread operator, which is dot dot dot. It basically tells that you have to include all the field that is present in the request.body. So it takes all the field, which is email ID, password, name, and for avatar we give it by default here because these all are required field. So we must have to pass it. Now go to the Postman. And again send post request. User is registered successfully. Then open your MongoDB and refresh. And at that time it stores the hash password instead of plain text. Now our sign up is working fine. Password is also be hashed and stored it into the MongoDB. Then let's check our login feature /login route. So open our Postman, create a new HTTP, select post request, enter your URL localhost :3000/user/login with body, and we have to send raw format JSON. So here we want only two fields, email ID and password. Email ID, skyhub@gmail.com. Next is password, is skyhub@123. Now send. $400 bad request, so we missed comma here. Again send, and user logged in successfully. Is also cookie and token is also created. Save it. Login. Okay, let's change the password and see what's happened. Send. Again user logged in successfully, so it is not good. Let's check what's happened. Open our VS Code. So here the hashing function is working perfectly, but it does not work perfectly because the error is not shown, password is incorrect. So here is some mistakes. So let console.log compare. Let's check what value is inside the compare after login. Open your Postman, then again send request, send post request to /user/login. The login success. Check. Here it returns promise as a pending. So bcrypt.compare returns promise as a pending. So we must have to await here. Now let's again check it correct, working correctly or not. Again send post request. Now it gives error, password is incorrect. It also gives false. So using this method we will find our error in our code and then solve it. That's a good practice. So again let's correct it. Send. User logged in successfully. Cookie is also created. Token is also working fine. Sign up. So also created. Side cookie there is also a token. So that's it for today. Thank you.